It's always tough for a wife when her husband dies. She has to deal with the grief, plan the funeral, and think hard about what she would do now in life with all the money she's going to make. Why? There's an old joke poem that gives us a clue. The widow's hole, no time for tears to dry. Only her busy beaver is washed before her next customer. Ah, the beauty of Japanese poetry. Now, I ain't no poet, but I have accidentally stepped into a poetry class once and left after seeing the students in a circle reciting sad haikus about who would be more broke after graduation. Just kidding, I'm being unfair to poets. They were reciting limericks. Anyways, I think I know what I'm talking about when interpreting poems. The poem meant a widow didn't have time to grieve because she was busy selling her body. The sex market waits for no one. Back in the Edo period, where young men looked like old men, the word for widow, or Goke, was slang for an older, independent prostitute, meaning a sex worker who didn't work for a brothel. But before we go chasing these widows of the night, let's talk about the proper behavior for a wife whose husband had died back in those days. There were no laws about what a woman had to do post-husband. She could stay in her husband's household, a respectable choice. She could remarry, but to be honest, any bachelor she might have found at her older age might have been as eligible as a white boy applying for an NAACP scholarship. But hey, you take what you can get. She could move back in with her parents, so they could comfort her in her grief, while they read off the list of husband candidates they were considering for her. Mr. Abe comes from a long line of umbrella makers. However, his top knot is a bit thin. A man with a limp top knot is not to be trusted. Now Mr. Yamada, on the other hand, his top knot stands tall like Mount Fuji. In rare cases, a woman could become the head of her husband's household. But while there were no laws about what a woman should do after her marital subtraction, there was an ideal. A widow who never remarried, stayed in the husband's household, remained as celibate as a YouTube dating coach, and only worked to support her in-laws and children. That was the ideal widow. And like most ideals, it rarely happened. No one expected a commoner widow to stay single. Most of the time, her neighbors and relatives were like, Asuka, your husband's already reincarnated into a caterpillar or something. Time to get out there and find someone. Like my son, Koji. Even when widows didn't jump back on the marriage carriage, no one expected her to keep her legs closed. People thought sex was like boba tea. Once you've had a taste, you could no longer live without it. There was another option for widows that freed them from family responsibilities, theoretically. She could always become a nun. Great for karma, not so great for your wallet. And you had to swear off the pee-pee for life. Now, if you couldn't care less about family, but you still cared about not starving, well then wash that busy beaver and step into the Goke prostitute life. Why did women choose to become Goke? It was popular in towns near the sea to use the word goke, or widow, to mean older, independent sex workers. That's because fishing was dangerous. You could get lost at sea, and you're not even guaranteed a good catch. Fishermen had a bad habit of never returning home, either because they died or because they thought that bringing home tuna when your wife specifically asked you to go get salmon was more dangerous. With no fish, no funds, and no pee-pee, many women turned to sex work to keep the rice bowl filled. These freelance fund providers became popular in the early 1800s, especially in this city known for letting prostitution run wild, a city with no laws restricting the sex trade, the city of Niigata. There were something like 30,000 goke in this place, selling their irresistible personalities. Just to give you a peek into the Niigata nightlife, once a merchant from the capital went to Niigata, eager to taste the city's famous hospitality. He didn't nibble, he took whole mouthfuls of it. The man partied with not 2, not 3 bedroom consultants, but 8 of them, and drank until his liver begged for mercy and he blacked out. After waking up the next day, sandwiched between 8 women, he thought, well, that was way too degenerate, I better slow down. So what was a responsible man to do? He took only 6 of the women, sightseeing and drinking the whole day. Now, why would a woman choose to become a goke? The reason were as varied as a husband's excuses after getting caught seeing one. She might have actually lost her husband and had to make a tough choice, selling her cookie or not being able to afford cookie. She might have been a brothel prostitute who finished her contract and was let go. Without a husband or other career skills, she could only continue her work outside of a brothel. Or she might have been an unmarried woman who thought, husband schmusband, all I need is a futon and some lube to slide through life. If you had enough customers as a Goke, it was better than working at a brothel. Brothel courtesans had to pay off their debts to the house. They were more like indentured servants. But Goke kept their money, and popular ones often charged more than a brothel worker. Now, when you hear the word widow, you might think, oh, how sad, her husband died and left her alone. But in the Edo period, many people thought, oh no, she's going to destroy this country. You probably already guessed because you are a smart watcher of this channel, but for the other dummies, a Goke sex worker did not have to be a widow. It just meant an older, independent prostitute. The word Goke implied a woman who was seductive, sexually experienced, and by some miracle, available to you. It also implied independence, which was the biggest problem. There was a ticking time bomb hidden under all that silk and makeup. The story people traditionally told themselves was that prostitutes were good daughters who worked to support their poor parents, or good wives who supported their poor families. The Goke were none of this. They were women who supported themselves, who carved their own paths to success without help from anyone. Those selfish bit. Why did they become such a threat to society? Well, let's look at what one government official said about the Goke. He said, because of them, regular women were starting to get some funny ideas, like, maybe I can survive on my own if I made enough money, or maybe divorce isn't that bad, or maybe my futon can fit more than one man. The threat to society was financial independence. To him, economic independence made women promiscuous, and if women were convinced that they could survive outside the household and make it rain like it's monsoon season, they would all jump at the chance to invite a parade of men into their bedrooms. It would be terrible. Families would break apart or not be made in the first place. He shared the fears of many people at the time. Japan was a society based around the household. The state saw its citizens not as a bunch of individuals, but a bunch of households working as part of occupational groups. Households paid taxes, not people. Women were useful as daughters for marriage deals or as wives to continue the family line. A woman's place was in the house, but once in a while, you'd get an entrepreneurial woman who traded in her spatula for a sexy bamboo pipe. Such a woman was a danger to society. Back then, the idea of individual rights and freedom was usually brought up over a campfire when someone needed to tell a scary story. Last night, I heard a weird sound coming from downstairs. I quietly tiptoed down and saw, to my horror, a scary young man sitting in the near dark. My son. Oh, I caught him. Selecting a wife. Oh, by himself. The way Goke were happily making money to support themselves and not a family was proof to people that morals were breaking down. People complained that these wicked women rejected marriage and family for the chance to wear gold hairpins, while secretly paying to see them take those hairpins off. Households were in danger of collapsing, taking the country with them. Now, if there was one group that really hated this rise in prostitution, they were people who lived in small rural villages. In these villages, where the only exciting thing that happened was sometimes cousin Kenzo got caught in the barn with a family ox, prostitution wasn't a huge part of the economy like it was in big cities. These country folk had no incentive to defend it. All they knew was that their neighbors kept visiting brothels and sex workers all the time. They complained that this sex market was out of control, blaming the rulers for allowing it and blaming women for participating. They accused these women of shamelessly chasing profits while ignoring the men who drove the demand. Even though the authorities didn't like it, they couldn't do much about the Goke. Goke sex workers continued to exist until the government banned prostitution in the Meiji period, after which the practice finally started existing illegally. Most Goke chose to enter the business when they were already adults, but many professional bedroom occupiers stepped foot in the industry as children, sometimes as young as 5. Click here to learn about the lives of girls sold into Japan's pleasure districts. We have some new patrons today: Senna Trottier, Jordan J. Dang, Gemster710, Joshua Crabtree, Tanaka, and Cindy Easley. Thanks so much, you guys. Alright, I love you, and spread the knowledge.